Hey there. Today, I wanted to talk about common chronic hives triggers. And of course, these are going to vary from person to person. It's not a comprehensive list because we all are so unique and there's so many different things that can trigger our hives. Hive triggers are going to be different than cause. So, for most of us, it's either autoimmune or autoallergy, but then we can have things that trigger them. So, our mast cells are already really ready to degranulate because we have this disease, but exposure to these triggers can make it that much worse. So, for myself, I've had inducible urticaria since childhood. My son, who's 14, he also has inducible hives. And what that means is that environmental factors have a big impact on our breakouts. So, I actually didn't develop chronic hives until I was in my mid 20s. Those are now in remission. I don't have hives daily anymore like I did for many, many years. Um, but I still get inducible hives. So, like today, I'm driving with my air conditioning on and it's blasting on my arm. So, I get a little patch of hives on my arm. So, cold, heat, friction, vibration, pressure, those are all big triggers for a lot of people. A lot of people with chronic urticaria also have inducible urticaria. So, for example, like, you might notice, like, wearing a bra can be super uncomfortable, like, a lot of times you probably get hives around your bra strap and things like that because you've got the pressure, you've got the heat. As far as environment, some more triggers would be, like, exposure to fragrances. That's a big trigger for a lot of people. Mold can be a big trigger for a lot of people. So, taking a look at your products and seeing, are they fragrance free? They're probably not unless you specifically were looking for fragrance free because unfortunately there's fragrance in virtually everything. Even like your makeup, a lot of times has fragrance in it, sadly. And then mold is a big one for a lot of people. A lot of people have mold in their home. They don't even realize it. So running an air filter can be helpful. Of course, ideally, you would mitigate the mold, but it's super expensive. I'm dealing with that in my house right now, and it's just not financially feasible to mitigate that, but an air filter does help. So then we have food triggers. So food triggers, so like if you're going on a healing diet like an AIP or paleo or some kind of diet to reduce your inflammation, that's going to be different than your trigger foods. So like your trigger foods would be foods that actually trigger a hive response in you. Whereas if you're eliminating some foods, you're on those kind of diets, you're eliminating them because they're damaging to the gut and they're inflammatory overall. So those are like more of a long-term healing protocol. Whereas if you're avoiding trigger foods, so that would be like, for example, if I eat shrimp, I break out in hives. A lot of high histamine foods, a lot of people with hives have a reaction to. So, really keeping the food and symptoms journal can be helpful in identifying those for yourself. And then you can avoid those triggers. Oh, medications. So NSAID medications in particular can be a big trigger for a lot of people. My immunologist told me to treat it as an allergy because he's seen people actually have anaphylaxis, even though they have never had a response before. And if you search the group, you'll find more stories like that. So if you're on NSAID medications, talk to your doctor, see if there's alternatives. The other thing too with medications is a lot of times they have like additives and fillers. So, again, it's just watch your body and see how you respond. Like I hate Benadryl is pink. Like it's obviously like got a lot of food dyes and stuff in it. So things like that can be a trigger for some people. Stress. So yes, stress is a big one. Stress and emotional factors. For me, that was like my triggering event, right? So like a lot of us, if you have an autoimmune condition, you have like a triggering event, like, and it can be any of these triggers that just kind of sends you puts your immune response overboard. So for me, it was stress, and stress and emotional factors can have a big impact on our hives. A lot of us have been accused of having stress hives, and people will say stress causes them. Stress is not the cause. It's important to know stress is not the cause, but stress makes our mast cells more ready to degranulate. Dr. Maurer talked about this in one of the interviews we did. He said that stress makes your mast cells more twitchy. So they're just more ready to degranulate. You respond more easily. You're more likely to get hives if you're under a high amount of stress. And I noticed too, like my dad passed away 5 years ago. He was my best friend. It's been really hard. And when I'm like really feeling my grief, that's when I have a hive outbreak. Even though I've been in remission for a few months now, I still notice, like, the, anniversary of his death this year, I had hives and I had no idea why, and then it just occurred to me that, "Oh, it's because of what day it is." So yeah, it's emotions definitely play a big role. And then infection or any kind of immune response, really. Anything that triggers your immune system can trigger your hives. You know, if you have a cold, you probably might notice that you have more hives. Maybe your hives, your initial trigger was, COVID or the vaccine. That's not uncommon because those things cause your immune system to be on high alert, right? And when your immune system is working overboard, and that's when things can go wrong. So, a lot of autoimmune conditions are triggered by those kind of events. So, like I said, that's not an exhaustive list, but those are some of the more common ones. Keeping a food and symptoms journal can really help just identify your own triggers. So when I was tracking, I tracked a lot of different things. Actually, I tracked the day of my cycle because hormones can influence our hives. I've tracked, the foods and drinks I was taking in, any supplements, how well I was sleeping, what was my stress level, did anything unusual happen that day? Like, did I go somewhere? Did I go to the mall and get exposed to some fragrances or things like that? So if you start tracking that, then that can be helpful in identifying your triggers if you haven't identified them yet. So if you have identified your triggers, let me know in the comments what you've identified. Take care.